Counting is a foundational skill that's really key to students' future success in mathematics. Because counting is really a simple task for most adults, it can be easy to overlook the fact that counting is more than just reciting number names. Counting involves three major skills that are referred to as the counting principles. Becoming familiar with the counting principles can help you recognize what aspects of counting to support your child with in order to help them become proficient counters. The first counting principle is ordered sequence of counting numbers. The second is one-to-one correspondence, and the third is cardinality. We'll dig deeply into each of these three counting principles next. Ordered sequence of counting numbers, also known as verbal count sequence, is the idea that there's an ordered sequence to be followed when counting. Numbers are assigned to objects in the same order, starting with 1. Basically, ordered sequence of counting numbers means that numbers are assigned in the same order every single time. You might notice that when young children are counting, they say something like 1, 2, 5, 7, 2, 3, 9. This is evidence that they really quite haven't mastered this skill yet. If you're looking to help your child develop a better understanding or mastery of the ordered sequence of counting numbers, we have a couple ideas of things you can do with them. The first is to model counting using the correct counting numbers. So letting them see, yes, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can embed this into things you're doing every day. Maybe you're going upstairs, you start counting the stairs, you tell your child you have 10 seconds till you have to start cleaning up, and you count up 1 to 10. So anytime that you can model that count sequence, it can be really valuable. The second idea is to sing songs that involve counting and movement. It's a fun thing to do with your children. And then last is to provide children with a set of objects to count rather than just having them count out loud. So if you're playing with blocks or cars or stuffed animals, actually have them count that set of objects. Or if you're having a snack, having them count the number of crackers or blueberries that are on their plate. The second counting principle, one-to-one correspondence, is the idea that exactly one number from the counting sequence is assigned to each object in the collection that's being counted. So essentially, each number goes with one object. You might notice young children can be pointing to objects more than once when they count, or maybe they're skipping objects when they count. This is evidence that they haven't mastered this skill yet. If your child needs support developing their one-to-one correspondence, we have a couple ideas of things you can do to help them with this. The first is when you're having them count, actually have them touch, move, or point to items that are being counted when each word number is said. Another idea is to ask your child, how do you know which items you've counted and which ones still need to be counted? This helps them to think through the actual process that they're doing when they're counting. And then lastly, when you're cleaning up or playing with your child, have them count each object as they put it into a bag or a bowl or another container. The third counting principle, cardinality, is the idea that when counting a group, the last number word that is recited in the counting sequence represents the number of objects that were in the collection being counted. Basically, the last number that's said when counting a group represents the number of objects that were just counted. So you might notice that when you ask a young child, how many are there after they've counted, they might start over counting or they might just say a random number word. This is evidence that they haven't mastered this skill yet and they might need additional practice. If your child does need more practice to develop their cardinality, we have a couple suggestions. The first is to ask your child after counting, how many objects are there? So once they've counted a group, it's important for us to ask them this question. We can't just assume that because they've counted a group correctly that they understand what this count tells them. Our second idea is to restate and emphasize the final number when you're counting. So if you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, there are 4 squares in all, really emphasizing that there are 4 squares for your child. It's important to note that the three counting principles develop concurrently. So that means that they kind of develop all at the same time. We're not going to see that first your child is going to master the ordered sequence of counting numbers, then move on to one-to-one correspondence, and then finally cardinality. They're going to develop in all different ways depending on the child. So for example, you might have a child who really knows the ordered sequence of counting numbers and is able to do that correctly, but they're still struggling with that one-to-one correspondence. And so the final number that they count is incorrect. But then when you ask them how many there are, they do have that cardinality. And every time they're going to say the number that represents the count that they just did, even though that doesn't represent the actual count of the group of items that they had. They might also have one-to-one correspondence down, so they know that each item represents a number name that they should be saying, but the number names that they're saying, the verbal count sequence might be incorrect. So every time they touch an object, they're saying a number, but those numbers are incorrect. They're skipping numbers. They're saying numbers that are incorrect. And so it really can just vary based on your child how those counting principles might develop. We would love to know what remaining questions you might have about the counting principles, or if there's ways we can support you in trying to develop these counting principles with your children. Please let us know in the comments, and also please be sure to like and subscribe so that we can keep sharing our content and make more math-happy families.